there, thanks for joining me for another week of development on Blink. It's Monday around 7 p.m., just finished up dinner and I'm about to sit down and get started on one of this week's tasks. So my big task and challenge this week for Blink is going to be implementing sound effects. But before I do that, I want to work on an issue with lighting. I posted an image of my character selection panel to Reddit just to see what people thought last week. And one interesting piece of feedback I got was that whoever commented said they really liked these types of games that used 2D lighting effects, and he was looking forward to seeing that in my game. And I realized that even though my scene is quote-unquote getting darker as you play, I'm not exactly using lighting as I should be. So my current solution for dimming the scene in Blink is actually not very clever. It's something that I came up with very early on in Blink's development. You can see over here on the left, I've got a dimmer game object, and what that consists of is a script and I guess primarily a sprite renderer. Now the sprite for this is actually just a big ugly black rectangle. What the script is doing is allowing other game objects to tell it to either dim or brighten up by changing the alpha value on the sprite. So basically it's either totally transparent with an alpha value of 0, or when that's 1 it's totally black. And that's just sitting on top of the background here. What I want to do, or start on tonight and then work on early this week, is remove the dimmer and its associated code entirely from Blink and instead implement a light game object here and apply whatever shaders I need to my background here to pretty much implement light correctly and hopefully allow me to introduce some other cool lighting effects when you blink and stuff like that. So I'm going to get started on that now, and I'll let you guys know once I have some progress. Alright, so it's 8 o'clock and I've managed to strip out the entire previous implementation of the dimmer that I had in Blink. Now if I just play it right here, it doesn't actually look any different than before because I was able to drop it in pretty much right in place of the dimmer. So what I'll do instead of showing you the gameplay is kind of show you how I managed to achieve this so quickly. The first thing I had to do was make sure that my background game object, which is essentially just a 2D sprite, was able to be affected by a light source. So in order to achieve that, I had to create a material that had the shader type of sprites diffuse and just plop that onto my background object sprite renderer. Next up, I removed all my dimmer code and dimmer game object and created a light object here. Now this is a directional light, and I had to change the Z value to -1 and make sure that it was pointing at my background. So if I zoom in here and pan around, you can see that they're not on the same Z plane here and the light is shining towards the background. Once I had those two steps complete, I was able to just change the intensity on my light and immediately see how that affected the background of my scene, which let me know if things were working. The fun part of this task for me was creating this nifty little light controller. This light controller is what the game world uses to change the intensity of the light in a number of different ways, really just two ways. The first of these ways is with this public float intensity, which just has a getter and setter to directly change the intensity of the light component. This is what the update function in my game world is using to slowly, I'm not there right now, that's what it uses to slowly decrease the light over time as the game goes on. What I also have is a public function called setIntensity, which provides a target intensity and a transition speed. This is how I tell the light that I want to transition to a new intensity over time, and this is what I'm doing in places where the game is ending and I want to either transition it back up a little bit so we can see the in-game menu, or if you're starting a new round, it'll transition back to full light. You can see right there is a slow transition, and if we tap play again, another transition out here back to full light. So that's what that function is used for. Overall, this turned out to be very easy to use, and in fact, since the intensity value goes between 0 and 1, and the alpha value of my previous dimmer went between 0 and 1, I was able to reuse a lot of the logic that I had before and essentially preserve exactly the same behavior that I had with my dimmer logic. With my new lighting system in place, I think that's going to wrap things up for tonight. Next steps will be creating some cool lighting functionality when the character blinks, or maybe when you get a perfect circle fill or something like that. The ability to create those cool lighting effects is the whole reason I did this rework. So I'm happy with the way things went. Going to take the rest of the night off, and I'll catch up with you guys either tomorrow or Wednesday. Welcome back. It's Tuesday after work, and I'm actually going to be spending this evening out with friends. We're going to go see a movie, so I'm not going to have any time to do development work tonight. However, after I finished recording last night, I actually hopped back on my computer and continued to work a little bit on the lighting, And I actually think I finished up kind of everything I wanted to do with lighting so far, so I'll go ahead and show you the progress that I made late last night. So last night I was working on a light that is emitted by the player as you're dragging him around. So as the player's circle gets bigger and bigger, you see a light more intensely emitted from the player that lights up the background a little bit. So I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. It's a little bit harder to tell as the background's already lit up, but you can kind of see it. It gets intense pretty quickly. These values might need tweaking, but overall I'm happy with the initial implementation here. As the scene gets darker, you can see that you basically just hold down the player character and he emits this light that lights up the background, so it kind of counteracts the lack of intensity from the scene light that's getting dimmer as you play. I think it looks really cool. I have no idea what kind of impact it's going to have on performance on the actual device that you're playing on, but like I said, I'm truly happy with how it looks right now. Easy to implement, so I'm going to keep it. Good morning, everyone. It's Saturday around 7 a.m. and like I usually do, I'm going to go climbing with some friends in a little bit, but before I do that, I want to enjoy a cup of coffee and see if I can't implement some of these sounds that I recorded into Blink. To record the audio I'm using in Blink, I wheeled over to my Mac setup here and utilized GarageBand to create the sounds that I needed. Specifically, I used my MIDI controller, which is an Akai LPK25, and I hooked that up to GarageBand and used a marimba instrument to record the various notes that I want to play when the player character fills a circle. Alrighty, after an hour, I've got some basic blinking noises implemented. I'll let you guys hear that right now. So as you can hear, there are about 4 different sounds that you can encounter based on how accurately you fill the circle. I think this actually sounds pretty cool. It's pretty much what I had in mind when I started recording these sounds. However, I fear that it can get maybe a little too repetitive if you are just kind of hitting the mid-range circle fill over and over and over again. You keep hearing the same note. I would love to hear what you guys think about that. Did that seem like the right amount of variance in the sounds that you're hearing? Did it seem like the right kind of sound for a blink, or should it be something a little more staccato, maybe not like an actual instrument? I don't know. I'd love to hear feedback, but this is good progress so far, so I think next I have to implement the UI select sound. So it's about 2 o'clock now. I went climbing and came back home and sat down and did a little more work on the sounds for Blink this afternoon, and as you can probably hear, I got the background sound working. Now this is just a sound of like crickets in the woods on someone's back porch that I got from freesound.org. I trimmed it to about 30 seconds and did some funny business in Audacity to make sure it was looping well. And now this is just playing on loop when the game starts up. And I think it sounds pretty nice. And honestly, the inclusion of these kind of crickety sounds makes this whole scene feel so much more alive to me. So I'm really pleased with how that is. So I'm just going to play now so you can hear kind of everything that we did today. I think that sounds pretty cool. I know I mentioned this before. I think some of the sounds can get a little bit repetitive when you're filling circles, but overall, I'm happy with the progress I made, and I'm pretty pleased with my first attempt at implementing sound in a game. Also, if you guys noticed, I unlocked my little Dragonfly character today while testing, and I think he looks really cool. I'm excited to see how the rest of these guys look as I keep playing. So, I think that's actually going to wrap up this week's video. We knocked out the sound, we knocked out the lighting, and I think everything turned out really well, and it's given quite a bit more personality to the game. So thank you guys so much for watching. I would love to hear some feedback on the stuff I implemented this week, and if you have any more ideas moving forward. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.